Welcome to our final affordable housing ordinance subcommittee meeting. Appreciate you all joining in person and online. So the first item on our agenda is public comment. Sure. With that, we'll move on to our second agenda item, which is discussion and vote on updating the affordable housing ordinance. So you'll have your handy dandy sheets here. This was a list put together by staff and I to go over some of the options we had discussed throughout our meetings. This isn't exhaustive, but I think it's pretty inclusive of some of the ideas that have been ping-ponged around over the last several months. Want to discuss these, get your thoughts on where we are, but first, before we move forward with discussion, I want to make most of y'all aware, and for those online as well, as said in earlier emails, having conversations with our county board members as well as with our state senator Barbara Bola. There are, I think, a number of different pathways we can go with this, both if we choose to act in an affirmative way to prescribe a certain solution to the county board in relation to any particular changes to the ordinance, or as has come up in conversations I've had with interested parties, perhaps we could give Arlington through legislation, so we still would have to go to the General Assembly for this, but we could ask the General Assembly to give Arlington the ability to change the affordable housing ordinance in accordance with its own procedures when it believes necessary, which would effectively give the county a lot more flexibility to decide when, how it can change the ordinance instead of having to repeatedly go to the General Assembly to make those changes. So as you can see, got a number of options here on both sheets. I will make one small change to option K on the second page. So the language here, we made some last minute changes to it, so it was more reflective of the spirit of what we want to do. So in place of the language here in J, I want to replace that with something that says, recommend that the Housing Commission advise the county board pursue enabling legislation that would grant Arlington County the authority to revise its affordable housing ordinance as needed to respond to evolving policy goals and community needs.
Okay, can you read that again, please, Brian?
Yes.
Nice and slow, Brian.
Recommend that the Housing Commission advise that the county board pursue enabling legislation that would grant Arlington County the authority to revise its affordable housing ordinance as needed to respond to evolving policy goals and community needs. I think that's a bit more descriptive of what our goal is here.
Brian, these are all kind of mutually exclusive, or you can mix and match, right?
Yes, in some way. So that's one point for our conversation. Thank you for pointing that out to kick things off. I'll say that I am against at this moment choosing most of the options on page one, seeing as that most of these are prescriptive to the county board about what specific changes it could make to the ordinance. I think over the last several months, we've revealed that this is a very complicated issue, and pulling one string out of the ball of yarn can untangle something else that we didn't necessarily anticipate. And I think it would be in our best interest to allow the county board the flexibility and space to proceed with its own empaneling of a group to figure out what the Goldilocks solution would be, right? So for example, we look at option A, right? A is recommending a specific policy change to the ordinance. I think at the moment that would be unadvisable. And I think we could be better served by, as Eric, by granting the county the ability to investigate and come to their own thoughtful conclusions and be able to act upon them as they see fit. So that process may take on a larger character in due time, but at this moment, I think it's better for us to simply grant the county the ability to do what it wants to do, to have control over its affordable housing ordinance policy, and we can cross that next bridge when we come to it. So kick it off for discussion from there. Yes.
I don't know at what point this could get stopped, but do you want to have a plan B?
That's a good point. So let's get into some of the practical matters of what would happen if we were to move forward with this, right? So what would happen? First, we would need to make this recommendation to the Housing Commission, right? That would go in front of them next Tuesday at their next meeting, 16th, I believe. They would debate it. I have confidence that they would approve it and it would go on to the county board. Given the conversations I've had and that our chair Kellen have had with them, they are not only aware, but most seem at least open to this idea. And from my understanding, Senator Favola was very sanguine on the idea herself. She was the one who encouraged that we move forward with it. So based upon their internal polling at the General Assembly, which would be the next step for things, we have, political players in Richmond that would be amenable to this kind of important policy. I think at that point, we would have a relatively simple pathway, right? To make it easy, but I think it would be easier than if we were trying to make a specific language change in the ordinance. So that's the general environment I think we'd be working in. I hope I've summarized that adequately, but suffice to say, we would have a champion General Assembly. I'm confident of that. And it would be incumbent on our county board to work with them, as well as our county lobbyists to advocate for this.
So follow-up question, if I may. Who and when decides on what changes will get made? Because we just put all this effort into figuring out numbers and how much, but does this group reconvene? Is this the Housing Commission who does this?
That's another good question. So
Let's just go.
that process, and that's something I think we should be moving forward to the county board with, when we decide to make a decision on this. They would be responsible for taking ownership of what moves forward. So they would convene, and I'd imagine this group would be similar to that was brought together back in 2005. It could be something similar to what happened with Pine Langston Boulevard. You were going to get a lot of the big players involved, both the community side as well as the developer side. So Venable, JBG Smith, for example, Equity, so on. And they would have to have skin in the game, right? I think that's important. I think it's important that the county make this a priority and invest in it. I think our work has been important in as much as we've been able to be sort of the advanced scouts, right? We've done a lot of the difficult intellectual work of finding out what is plausible and what, while perhaps appealing at first glance, comes with a lot of unknowns. And that's been documented throughout our process. I think that can serve as a jumping place for the county board. And I think we have a place in that conversation. I would like to see our members join any future effort that the county in panel. I think we bring a lot of important knowledge to that conversation, but I think there needs to be a larger and a more a longer effort, right, to decide what specific changes want to be made, because it's not a simple matter as deciding what the numbers are, because frankly, we don't know what the number should be even right now. So that's why I wouldn't be comfortable in saying, let's pick, 50% or set 80%, because we don't know if that would work. And I wouldn't think that that's something that the county would support, because they don't have enough to go off of that. But I think we can grant ourselves time and give ourselves a good position to make the changes we need.
I just wanted to circle back. I don't know, did we get an answer to the Plan B question?
No.
I guess first we have to figure out what our priorities are if this group decides on something, and then we Plan B after that.
Sorry,
It's okay, we could put it in the parking lot until later.
the other
So,
questions about the.
so Brian, first of all, I still don't think I got the end of the words that you are recommending that we vote on. And so I'm troubled by that. I really hate not having exactly the words that you're asking us to approve. So it would be really helpful. I don't know, Alex, can you print something?
Yeah.
Or maybe up there.
Can you put it up there? It's just really,
Keep it on the
it's
screen.
very problematic
Sorry.
from my point of view. So I just want to say that. The second thing, and I've been worried about this for a while, is that there is some philosophical agreement around this very table about what underlies why we think adjusting the ordinance or giving the county board the power to do that is a good idea. And I think, I mean, it's all well and good to say people can go back and listen to our meetings and stuff, but I am a big believer, and you have to leave a written trail. You have to say, so, I mean, I think I think the group can say, you know, it's our understanding that, and there's some language here, and I forgot my readers, which just drives me crazy, but there's an understanding here that the contribution that can substitute for on-site units in base density is out of whack. I think we all agree, don't, Greg, that's a statement you and Matt would agree to too, right? It's disproportionately low. And for that reason, there's a need to change. I think we also can say this group had a pretty robust conversation about how on-site units in bonus density might benefit from a different, more transparent approach. And that is something we all agree on.
Could you repeat that part? I'm sorry.
That the on-site units, which are currently part of bonus, but which staff has been negotiating cash outs on, that whole process is not transparent, and it needs to be more transparent. So that is another statement that I think the group basically agreed on. And you know what we've said from the very beginning, this is about more money for AHOWG. And what we thought we could trade to get more money for AHOWG was providing certainty in certain areas for the development. I objected to something that came out recently where it sounded like we were trying to equalize, make it so developers didn't pay more. I don't think that was certainly never my intention. If you're gonna buy out a bonus, it has to be at a price. It has to be at a real price, not a low price. So, but I'm concerned that those sort of, I don't know if you call them principles or key understandings or whatever, that with this being all we have before us tonight, and there's no writing to go with this that you can give, well, whatever we decide about this, right? There's nothing that says this group met for 8 months or 6 months or however many it was. Here are the things we agreed. We agreed in our description of the situation. We're now recommending X, given the limited time that we had. I mean, I think predominantly what you're saying in a lot of this is Housing Commission, you need county staff and the county board to be doing this work, not a group of us to figure out what the puts and takes are. I mean, I think that's the fundamental answer here. So that's just kind of, I'm not sure. Oh, thank you very much, Alex, for putting that up there. Because I don't. So here's just a legislative question I have about these actual words. Okay, if we're basically asking, we're canceling an existing statute and saying, give us a new one.
Not necessarily. I would take issue with that statement. I don't think that's factually correct.
It's an enhancement.
It's an enhancement. It doesn't mean that you would have
Yeah,
to
modification.
cancel the existing.
Well,
ordinance.
then you've lost the we don't want to be tied to the General Assembly anymore. If you don't cancel the one that is word for word the same as ours.
There would have to be, I think there'd have to be a transition, but I like where Mary was going. I mean, the thing now, we got short time, we gotta get something done. So I think J makes sense as modified. What Mary is saying, we met for 4 months, we came up with general principles that I think should be in this thing, saying, however, if they do it, but it's gotta be in the confines of, is that what
You
you're
could-
saying?
Yeah, you could do it in
Okay.
the form of a
So-
whereas, you know.
Whereas, yes, I
whereas.
totally agree, because we have a track record there. We've done something. We've done these things. So I would be perfectly amenable there. One of the areas that I've been uncomfortable about, and I wish we had more developers here, you're one. This is now a national issue. All right, you read any newspaper. It's not only national. You go to England, everyone has it. And it's regulatory relief, and it's all of these things. We haven't given it, we're giving things in code, FAR, people that don't understand this stuff. Can we say something that if you're doing an environmental thing, you don't have to have the Cadillac, you can have the Ford? You see what I'm saying? Because, and we've had experience where people have been penalizing developers for not going the top notch. And it's happened before our eyes. So I want to see something like that.
Yeah, I don't.
Well, you can't have it both ways, Mary. If we're giving.
Well, I just am saying, I don't think that we as a group, I was trying to reflect things that I thought that there was generalized consensus on. I might agree with you 200% that we've been aimed at the gold standard on tons and tons of things, and that it has gotten in the way of achieving certain goals. I might agree about that.
There's evidence of it. I have evidence.
I know, but I'm just saying we collectively haven't
Well,
parsed it enough. What we would be saying, I think, is, county board, here's a few things that this disparate group did agree on. And here's what we think your next step should be. You need to empower county staff and direct the manager to seek, to do the underlying work so you can, do this legislation. I'm troubled by the words, but, 'cause it's not enabling
Hey, Brian.
legislation.
Yes, real quick. I see Nikki has a question. Yes.
It's my understanding that other localities in the state already have this authority. Could you speak to that and maybe some of the background as to why Arlington doesn't already have it if other localities do?
Well, so that's a good question. We deliberately chose not to obtain that a
No.
while ago for a number of reasons. There is a history behind that. And Mary can speak more to that. It is more that we were forced to choose this rather than we chose it. But Mary, if you'd like to kind of speak.
I
to
would
that.
just say Arlington was ahead of the curve in terms of the General Assembly taking up this particular topic. The county board tried to extract a large contribution. The developer, in terms of on-site housing in the base density. The developer sued and went to the General Assembly. The lawsuit was set aside. This ordinance was negotiated, and part of how they kept everybody okay was they put the same language in our ordinance as they put in the state statute. Several
Okay, this
years.
is what was discussed at the in-person meeting a few months ago.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
okay, got it.
Several years later, what happened was they granted more general authority to certain localities, not the whole state, but
Right.
Fairfax, Michelle, I can't remember who, but
Alexander.
there were a handful of places that got it. But because of the process we went through, and I will also say, because I was on the county board during some of these years, the General Assembly was extremely angry at Arlington over the Hot Lanes lawsuit. And so any specialized legislation related to Arlington was not doable. They just wouldn't even, they were just punishing us all the time. So, but anyway, that's the reason, Nikki. There are things about our ordinance that are unique. Like we get a contribution off of commercial buildings. That is not, I believe, available to the rest of the state.
Can I comment on finish what Mary was saying a minute ago? And that is, we do have a law on the books that gives us the permissions we have now. And we like one of them in particular that isn't up for discussion here, and that's the commercial contribution. If we go and we ask for this and we get it, we now have two statutes that are conflicting because we can't do everything we want and say we're going to do it this way. So we have to get rid of, we can't have two competing statutes. One of them has to give.
Yeah, because it says revise its affordable housing ordinance.
But I think there would be a transition. I've been in the legislative thing 20 years. There's a transition on anything. So I think the lawyers could figure that out.
But we have to tell
Well, the question is,
people what we want to
Well,
do with the
that's right,
existing
right.
statute.
We want to,
The effective date. would
our
be delayed.
recommendation is to create a substitute legislation.
Yeah.
That would allow the Arlington County to revise its affordable housing ordinance as needed.
Right.
But we want to replace what's there. Isn't that the group's recommendation?
well,
Replace, rewrite, I mean,
Well,
I
I
think
think
it's
we're-
logistics.
I think, yeah, I think and I actually don't think that's pure semantics. I think there is a nuanced difference between revise and replace,
If we
right?
can let like county staff, county attorney, like they'll get into the nitty gritty of exactly how to write it and all. If we give, as you're saying, like, this is
Give
the
them the intent
general.
of what we want, yeah.
You know, these two recommendations or whatever, then they're going to do the nitty gritty and get it ready for legislation. Like, we're not responsible for
No,
that.
no, I know we're not. I just, I think we have to be clear that the statute, the current state statute would go away.
What's the risk to
Oh.
that?
I mean, it just becomes part, there's a new legislation and they just say, and this cancels the other statute.
Once the
Could
new-
they just,
But again, they decide if they rewrite because it's our number of the code and make it different, or they
Yeah.
remove and do a new, like, I don't know that I don't feel like I need to worry about that right now.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
You, Mary, like, what does it have to do with
Hold on,
right
we're
now? You know what I
looking
mean?
at a transition. The thing is, if this replaces the other one in Arlington County and the Arlington way, it may take 3 years for them to do something. So what would it be, 3 years without a statute? So that's why there's got to be a trigger saying that this replaces the old once the county does establish its new thing. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, so here, you have the state code, you have the Arlington County ordinance, right? We are not saying remove the ordinance. We are saying remove the statute, remove the limitation that exists in state law to us being able to revise and amend our ordinance. So that's the clarity that I'm seeking. So maybe instead of its affordable housing ordinance, because it's we could have, maybe it's revise the county's affordable or ordinance as needed, without regard, anyway, I'm just troubled by that
No,
because
I
it's,
appreciate that.
you see the
Yeah,
why.
I think I
I mean, you
think
could say the county's own affordable housing ordinance. You're looking for a clarity.
Well,
around
right,
ordinance.
but I'm also saying there's already legislation on the books in Richmond
Right.
that says Arlington County has to do it this way. And you need that to go away in order to do this.
I see what you're saying. So effectively, we would be asking for legislation which doesn't affect, in the immediate sense, it would not affect Arlington's statute, right? Not,
Arlington's ordinance.
that's
Arlington's ordinance.
nothing wrong. We would specifically be talking about Virginia code, and this is 15.2-8. That's the piece of code we're talking about.
Right.
You would be amending a specific piece of that language and saying there will no longer be a cap on the ability for Arlington to amend this. We would no longer require the county board to seek Richmond's approval for further amendments. That is a power now vested within Arlington County.
So you might say, recommend that the county board pursue legislation, pursue changing section whatever it is in the state code to allow Arlington County the authority to revise its own affordable housing ordinance. So that's all, the legislation, because Joe's right, the ordinance doesn't need to go away. They can study for 3
Yeah.
years what they're gonna do relative to the
Right, that would
ordinance.
be the
Like
second
us,
back to
maybe
your.
happening.
Right, but
You know?
you need, what you're looking for is relief from the requirements of section whatever,
Yes.
so that Arlington County has the authority to revise its own affordable housing ordinance.
Okay, I think I'm
Does
amenable.
that, Alex, does that make sense to you? Yeah.
I'm amenable.
We could even put that in an explainer sentence ahead of this, in order to.
And to your points earlier, there is a possibility of making a main motion and then additional motions, like you said, so that you can capture the additional recommendations if there are on top of a main one, for example.
Yeah.
And that's how I think you would memorialize it. And I do think we are going to, Brian and staff will work on something to make sure it is in writing before the 16th.
This hasn't been officially moved. This is just under discussion, right?
Yeah.
That's correct.
I know, I feel like we're ahead of ourselves. Have we eliminated all these other things first? And
No,
we're just moving to that?
but I appreciate the conversation. I mean, we're
Right.
kind of, back-ended on it, but I think we're getting a lot of the mental heavy lifting out the way. And I appreciate Mary's point that it does matter how this is structured linguistically, because those changes are nuanced. But to Mary and Joe's point, this process moving forward, if we were to move forward with an amended version of this item, which is simply a revision of point J here, that would be incumbent on the county board and their processes. And I had envisioned that they would work on that for perhaps a year or so, as they typically do. And members of this body would most likely be grandfathered into that because we bring with us that institutional knowledge from these discussions. Point being, though, is that we would be able to have that conversation in good faith because the county would be operating under a different standard, which it could make those changes, which, as we know, they cannot right now under current Virginia code. So,
Greg, I'm looking at you like, what do you think?
I have some trepidation around the perception of this change amongst the development community as being a wholesale reallocation of authority to make changes to the entire scope of the policy, especially within the context of the larger DC metro area in which there are other jurisdictions who have that sole authority today and have, probably the development industry's opinion, gone too far in making changes that have resulted in development activity coming to a screeching halt effectively. I think Montgomery County, the district, Prince George's County and others, to the point where they're now considering, in the case of the district, undoing some of those changes. And so I think what in the eyes of the development community may be working well on Arlington County's behalf currently is a system of checks and balances that tends to mediate maybe some of the more extreme impulses on one side or the other of those changes, and tend to soften or mitigate the magnitude of those changes over time, which again leads to predictability and certainty and all the things that I think today have continued to make Arlington County a viable place to do business and to continue to see development activity whereas in some of those other jurisdictions you are not. So I know that's a perception thing, and I think that I agree that there would be robust debate and deliberation in the process of amending the county's ordinance, and in all likelihood, and the development community would have the opportunity to be a part of that and influence that. So it's not gone forever, obviously, but I think they're trying to not interject too much my own opinion, but think maybe put myself in the shoes of the rest of my professional community and anticipate what some of that reaction might be.
I have the good fortune of not having to do that. I appreciate your capacity to be neutral in that way. I want to have a debate on that point, because I think it's an important one to consider, right? Clear-eyed about what the process would be moving forward if we were to adopt some version of this, right? Limited as it may be. This would, by all accounts, receive pushback from developers and lobbyists in the General Assembly. We should be honest about that. Yes.
Yeah, I think it comes down really to the big question is who pays for this new affordable housing that gets created? Is it, there's different segments of the population. We could hypothetically do like a tax break, and that would come from county funds or whatever, that is revenue that would have been generated, and that's out of people's property taxes across the county. Raising the ordinance, and then it's passed on to renters or whatever thing gets cut in the balance. And I think that's the big underlying question. And as it comes to whether this gets, when it comes down, when you're bringing it down to a local level, you are taking like a check that is opened up to a political realm, and you have like, it's not that we don't have faith in our county board to do a thing that's going to be a net positive to our community and region as a whole. But we see, like, for example, Alexandria, they have a ordinance that they're removing that was for a green building initiative because it wasn't feasible, but that was on the books since 2019. How much impact on housing did that have between it was enacted and taken away? A lot of other, talk about Maryland and their policies, have their local policies have directly impacted, housing production, which, that's a big effect. So it comes down to is, I don't know if we could amend this or have a thing to provide that certainty that whatever ordinance, because that's what we've been really debating now, is how much do we provide incentives on the back end to increase the overall contribution without raising costs to the overall development, and however that gets transmitted. So
two things about that, though. I would say one, to an earlier point you made, whether this is in the hands of Richmond or the hands of the county board, all of it is political, right? I think there's this myth that having housing policy in the hands of the General Assembly is somehow less political, that is somehow more stately and measured, right? Sort of the mythos around the United States Senate, that is this august body. But that's not correct.
I think it's what Greg said earlier. it's a check and a balance. That it's not that it's more aspirational or high or anything. It's just that there's a check and a balance.
And what is
Or
that
I'm thinking
benefit?
more of the predictability, like if Arlington has an opportunity to make a change when it wants, that adds so much uncertainty in the development world, whereas if they knew that for 3 years we were trying to get something, one change made in GA, then it would be like, okay, this might happen in 3 years, and this is exactly what might happen, that's much more predictable. So I think we'd have to figure out, how would it come on incrementally? Or could it come on, like we were saying, maybe in 3 to 5 years, so the people who have a project going right now know they're in the old system or whatever, like we might be able to think through ways, implementation ways.
Yes.
That I don't think we necessarily need to deal with right now.
Well, two things, yes, but another thing with that is, and to play a bit of devil advocate against my own ideas, I think developers would also take issue with the fact that the county could change the ordinance whenever they want to beyond the date upon which this becomes active, right? There is this perception, I think, that, well, the county is unreasonable to be given to these sort of passions, and then perhaps one political wing is ascendant at one moment, they prevail upon the county board, and then they hastily make changes to the ordinance, and that creates instability, right? That becomes unpredictable, scares away investment, scares away developers. I think that is made in good faith, but I wouldn't agree that the county would be as frivolous as what that assumption believes, right? Like you would have to assume that the county would not obey the same Arlington way that it had in the past by making this change, that you would somehow undo something fundamental about the culture of Arlington by making this one change. I don't think that's real.
Well, I think that's what got us here, Brian. Honestly, I think a couple county board members decided, I was not on the board when that decision happened, but several people said, we don't think we're getting the value we should be getting. They should be stepping up. It's happening in DC. We're just gonna slap it on this particular building and see what happens. And and I served with some of these people. Philosophically, they fundamentally believe the development community was making an awful lot of money, and Arlington wasn't getting sufficient value for the density it was creating that allowed that money to be made. Now you can argue, about it, and people did, but the reality was they overstepped. And as Greg said, if you move this ordinance entirely into their control, which is what Fairfax has, which is what Alexandria has, which is what Loudoun has, then, that's the risk. And so the accompanying mitigation of risk has to be certainty. It has to be certainty for the people you're asking to make the investment, even as and I think we got ourselves tied up in are we trying to make the development community not pay more in some of our language? And there's a price you can put on giving people certainty. It's less time in the process. It's fewer, it goes into the pro forma at the front end. That was one of the things we found when we did the work, Michelle and I, for the Community Foundation was, prior to the pandemic, every developer told us the Arlington process costs $1 million. If you can give us more certainty,
That's what I'm looking for.
we're willing to move that money over into community benefits. We're not going to take that into our profit. We're willing to put it over here, but we missed our moment. And so here we are again. We have potentially another thing to trade without having done enough work to know. Right. And that's really where we are. But I think, Alex, thank you for the suggestion about we could make a second recommendation. So if we were to do some rewording of this that basically says, we're asking you to cancel this statute and instead give us a new law that lets us do some version of this. Our next recommendation could be, we recommend, should the legislation pass, that the county board convene a working group to further develop options for amendment of the county's existing ordinance. So,
Could you say that one more time? Mary?
sure,
Thanks.
we recommend that should the legislation pass, the county board convene a multi-sector working group to further develop options for amendment of the county's existing ordinance.
I think that was always the plan, wasn't it? Something like that. Like if this
But
went
again,
through,
I
then
mean,
Arlington would
You
have
want
to
a paper trail though.
Oh,
Well, I want a paper trail and I want to say to the development community, hey, wait, this is not the sky's gonna fall.
Yeah.
Right? This is not wholesale, throw the thing out tomorrow, the county board's gonna put something new in place. And I think that's an important thing
Yes.
to also say.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna give this to you,
I see Alex is also.
to Alex, and you can.
Thank you.
Uh-oh.
And Eric, I'm sorry, I see your hand up. I don't want to skip over you.
I'm sorry, I talked.
No, you're fine. You have my problem.
It's all good. I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person. So just a couple straight thoughts. I think with a group like this, having served on the August Housing Commission for many years, I think we shouldn't be super afraid to not have all the answers right now. I think discussion is good. I think debating semantics is good because we want to leave a paper trail. But I don't think we need to know the answer to every, machination of this, because the fact that this group exists and this discussion is happening is a start, and it's an important start. So I think that's one point. I think the second point I want to make is, I really appreciate all the background knowledge about what's happened in the past and how we got here. But the reality is it's 2025, not 2005. And we're dealing with a different set of challenges. And so I think it's okay to be willing to recommend some risk taking or at least exploration. I think the third point is that check and balance. That to me, that's the elections that we have every year. We have an election every year in this county and a primary for county board. So I think that's a pretty effective check and balance. We have a lot of focus on controlling costs and housing. And I think that Arlington should, enjoy the benefit of the doubt kind of in that space. I think the Amazon deal is a pretty good example of that. We've gotten a lot of affordable housing, but I think the county cut what turned out to be a very good deal for us and protecting our interests. And I think that our staff has done a pretty good job historically thinking about costs, not just for the county, but for the development community. You can look at things like our commercial markets resiliency initiative right now, where we're really looking at how we can lower costs, for small businesses. So I think all of that said, I get it. It would be a different scheme, but I also think the county deserves a tremendous benefit of the doubt for the focus that we have put on, maintaining and lowering costs for small businesses, including housing. So I think that's it. We don't have to be in complete agreement, in my view, on some of this stuff, but the fact that we're providing, recommendations at all, I think is one of the most important things this group is doing.
Thank you. And I appreciate your point about elections being an effective check, because I would agree with that, right? This is a democratic society still. And I think we do have, as long as we can keep it. And I think it's important that we recognize what the county does or doesn't do will have political, impacts, right? If you screw something up, voters typically in a very educated place like Arlington will punish you for it, right? And
I would say that is the risk, is that we have a process that's essentially been locked away in Richmond, for better or worse, and now we're going to unlock it. And again, you just got to look at other jurisdictions, also nearly as same education profiles, Arlington incomes, that have done things severely adversely impacting investment decisions. And and not, I mean, we have a good track record, but now it's like you have to rely on this to continue. And as things happen to the county, that's still an investment decision now that is like, oh man, do we really want to, oh, this happened. What else is going to change that we can't foresee? That gets baked in the process no matter what. And that's hard to really measure because you only see what investment decision gets made, but it's gonna impact the people with money, and you're gonna have people that decide, okay, we're gonna go to what places are leaning towards policies that we want, that we are advocating for, and it could be slow, but it will happen. It'll be hard to measure.
You're talking about a slippery slope effectively, right? You're taking something that is not falsifiable because, to your point, it is nebulous. We don't know now. And then saying what's going to have all these cascading effects, even though the precipitate cause, we can't actually say, we can't distinguish. I think that is, while important to keep in mind, and I think we should emphasize the county board in a further amendment to Mary's point that we recommend a say, it's arbitrary, but 3 to 5 year kind of refractory period, right? In between when you pass any changes to the ordinance, you have to wait maybe 3 to 5 years before you do it again. So you can't just do it once after another, which is, of course, something that would cause uncertainty, right? You can bake that in. But again, to Alice's point, we're kind of putting the cart before the horse in a way. I mean, we can make that recommendation and say, we would not advise you to just put this out and go, willy-nilly with it. But you can put these kind of guardrails in place while still giving the county the authority.
Part of the reason I recommend that we do this second piece is so that we don't have NIOP and NVBIA and every other big builder group lined up against it in Richmond. That's part of the strategy from my perspective. If we're going to go this way, then we also should say, we have to acknowledge that while Barbara's saying maybe it'll be easy peasy, that's her opinion. It might not be, but if the county board, can say, and this is the other piece, then at least they've said something, right? That's all.
And it's real quick, right, to Alice. One kind of fear I have is I don't want to be overly prescriptive where I tie the county board's hands preemptively before they even have the discussions, right? Because I would imagine after this happens, we would prescribe that they have this, robust conversation with relevant stakeholders. And I don't want to say, you must do this ahead of time. We can make these suggestions. We can say, we think it'd be advisable that you do these things. We think that for these reasons, you should have a gap period between when you can change the ordinance again after a previous amendment. But I don't want to be so prescriptive that we sort of tie the county board's hands behind their back before they even come into these negotiations. Yes.
I wanted to say a few things. It was interesting at the Housing Commission meeting the other night. One of the projects that's coming up on Saturday with the county board is 2500 Wilson, right by here. And it kind of struck me that, that base density, when they had their option of cash, on-site, near, and far, 4 options, of course, they go for cash because, and then I don't remember the numbers exactly, but like the on-site and the nearby were something like 4 or 6 units. So you're thinking the value of 4 or 6 units versus $7,380. I mean, it was like 4 to 1 or 3 to 1. Like, of course, the development community thinks things are working great in Arlington because for them, it's working great. Like, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but like, when the system's rigged towards you, of course, you don't want to change the systems. I think we're gonna have that tension, but to me, it's grossly under valued, and it's been bothering me for years. So I'm really committed to doing something, but I do think what we're talking about, you know, again, these kind of details, how the developers will respond, what action or particular wording the county board would use. That is, to me, next steps beyond this body. I think we're getting out of our area because we had the roundtable 20 years ago. I'm sure we're gonna have another roundtable. So plenty of developers will have a chance to say what they need to say. Plenty of advocates, plenty of staff, you know, everyone will be together on that if we can get, you know, this change, of course. But no decisions will be made without all those voices and the considerations we're talking about, like should we have a 3 to 5 year ramp up? Or a couple years ramp up and a 3 to 5 year reevaluation period or something, like concrete things that, you know, developers can see coming down the road and they can modify, you know, accordingly and feel like they are getting their certainty, but realizing like the big deal they've gotten for 20 years might be over. Like you're gonna have to start to contribute something that's reasonable in value instead of pittance, which is basically what we're getting now. So
Alex, what was the estimated? Oh, but during that last meeting we had with the housing commission, they said that the estimated value of these 2 bedrooms, they said about $600,000, was it?
Yeah.
between 5 and 6,
Maybe
right?
5 or 6, and then the contribution was
730.
750. Yeah, so, I mean,
Not even 1.5 units.
you only get 1.5 units.
But then you look at example in Clarendon, we have the lockup redevelopment site, and that is going to be a storage facility. And because of our, I know this is with bonus density, but that requires on-site units for residential.
With bonus density. With
Right,
bonus
but it doesn't require on-site, right, but because the base density is so low. What I'm saying is this ordinance that is in place for the housing is so biased against residential development that it's almost like a no-brainer to pick the commercial, which doesn't require on-site, and you just pay it. And then now we have less housing because we have made it so we have required so much incentive to not pick the housing option
But
that.
are we sure about that? I mean, how can you say that all the reasons that
Well, no,
the market unfolded
right.
till today was because
Right.
of that? I mean, we had a commercial boom. Everybody wanted their offices right here. And now all of a sudden, nobody needs their office. So, I mean, it is ebb and flow too, right? I mean, there's plenty of high-rise luxury condos around here, so it hasn't been such a disincentive to me. And now we're just seeing like, nobody wants to do, you know, commercial. No one needs office space now. So I think there'll be a fine group of people coming back and saying, let's make residential. I mean, we're seeing commercial buildings going down to be replaced by it. So the idea that we're gonna change the market so drastically with some of this, that no developers will want to develop in Arlington, I don't buy into that. I mean, of course, if we did something drastic, of course, but we're not gonna do something drastic because a lot of thinkers are gonna think about this. So I have faith in the process, I guess. And I feel like we're getting ahead of ourselves. And like when we sat down, I thought we were gonna go through some of these and make sure, or even verify, is this what we wanted? Like we haven't. So to me, whenever we're done this, I'm wondering if we're going back to this to kind of figure out what this group even wants to do going forward.
Yes, and we do have an hour for that,
I
but
did, I'm sorry, I think I cut you off. I apologize, but do you want to
Well,
respond? Because I do want to understand.
It's the fact that, I mean, with our, this policy is a clear bias towards the commercial option, because the commercial option to just, it said, I mean, I'm not sure the further, but just in this case is that, you know, we have, like, the county itself has the power to adjust the ordinance so that we could potentially make housing feasible work and get, because right now it's just the old, it's the, what was it, the 4-story building south of Washington Boulevard in Clarendon, west-ish, south. But my point is that a lot of our, you know, I mean, the assumption is the county board is going to continue its policy to work with everyone at the table to get things forward to have positive outcomes. But I would also, I mean, I would say, yes, there has been development, but I would also argue there are many sites that have not been changed because of the economics have not worked out. And I think, and part of that is, it's not just the housing ordinance that requires unfeasible amount of contribution, it's other things. And I don't know in the future how much willingness there's going to be to make things work out so that everyone is getting that positive benefit, because that's a political, like, I don't have a magic ball of who's going to get elected in when this ordinance is on at the table in the negotiation, because we're assuming that the negotiation is going to work, but there's always the risk that it's not going to work, and that's going to have an effect. So it's like, I don't know, that is a very complex calculation of understanding who's going to be in the county board in 5 years, what is our economic position, and this process is going to take staff resources, it's going to take a political requirements that's going to suck up, regardless, energy to change, because everyone's going to want their own things. Some people want, so that's my thing, is that I don't know what the future is going to hold, and that worries me, because from what we've seen in this, the amount of development that's happened in a lot of sites, that I think that's concerning to me.
Michelle, I think you have something to say, or you look like you have something.
No, I'm just not feeling very well, so I'm not sure how long I'm gonna be able to stick around. So you're seeing my face
Sorry.
showing that. I'm sorry.
It's a bummer because I know you have lots of things to share and good insights, but you're not up for it right now.
Jason, what would you think we should say then to the Housing Commission, given what you just said?
I think if we could somehow do, as much statutorily as possible to reduce whatever risks or potential for drastic changes in the ordinance,
In
or
the current ordinance?
or in the future, like
If we have the ability to change it ourselves, you're saying that it should be
yes, I think there's,
very carefully done.
I mean, most county ordinances don't get changed real often.
Right.
And that's sort of the reality of most of the work that happens, is they're not rewritten all the time.
A drop of a hat.
They're not rewritten often enough.
Yeah, some would say.
Yeah, so I think the risk of things being wildly unpredictable is unlikely. The problem with unpredictability is when something's not written down in an ordinance, and then all the open negotiation and arm twisting and stuff happens. That's what developers say they're most problematic.
Which is,
Would you say that some of the getting that certainty, like especially the negotiations part, would be of interest and would maybe soften developers to the fact that they may have to pay more upfront?
Yes, and in fact, I was going to ask a technical question related to that topic somewhat. Do the bonus density provisions reside within the county's affordable housing ordinance, or are they else in another section of the county's ordinance?
I
They're
believe,
in 15.5.9 of the Arlington.
that's a separate, okay.
That's the bonus, and then 15.5.8 is the base.
So it's suggestion potentially to add to this language to address that concern potentially would be to broaden the focus of a future
I see what you're saying.
multi-sector working group
Yeah.
who also come up with commensurate adjustments to the bonus density provision to,
in our ordinance.
yes,
Yes,
which presumably would not require the same
yeah.
adjustment to state.
I think the state statute just says the county board may make regulations related to bonus density.
That's right.
So I don't believe that the state statute controls bonus. Alex, I'm looking at you.
Yeah, I might, Russell, I see Russell's on
Is he
now.
there?
Do you happen to know?
Yeah, there is one section of the enabling legislation that speaks to our ability to also have the bonus density component.
But it doesn't have any calculation or anything. It just says the county board may.
Correct.
So I don't know if Mary shared this with you early on, and because I haven't been to many of these meetings, but one memorable thing that we heard from some of the developers that we interviewed for our project several years ago was to the effect of the situation with bonus density is getting close to the point that it got 20 years ago with the affordable
Base.
housing ordinance under the base, where somebody's going to sue sometime soon. And that was very memorable for me. So that is totally reflected in everything that I've
Wild
been
West out
hearing
here.
in conversation, that there's a benefit to getting ahead of that and resolving some of these, and that and dealing with that uncertainty seems to be one of the biggest trade-offs we could provide.
I think that's a
And I
great point.
think we should
And-
flag it that way to the housing commission. And I think the idea of putting, naming that section of our own statute in the second one is a great way to do that.
Someone have a packet or
Red or black?
red is fine. Thank you very much.
And this could also be tied, if it's gonna be a 3-5 years, that this could also fit in with our comprehensive plan as to how there could be initial policy statements in that plan, or I don't know what, affordable housing, if that could be the formulation, and then
That could be added into it.
yeah,
as
that,
part of
so
it.
instead of jumping right into what's the ordinance gonna change, we could go through a comprehensive plan process, see because we're gonna spend a lot of time, money on this, and then I don't know how, I know it's 20 years of affordable housing master plan, but how that changes, and depending on any, I think, go up changes potentially in 2027 or whatever, that's gonna affect the base and bonus, so that makes sense, just, okay, we're gonna have this, and then go versus saying, make a change based on our current zoning.
I think that there's been a huge amount of warping of our approach to zoning and development approval because ordinances like this one exist. And so like they haven't wanted to up-glup certain areas because, oh, well, that if we up-glup it, well, then it'll only be subject to base and we won't be able to negotiate the heck and pull things out of people. And so as a result, we have a much lower glup, less development of, essentially pre-approved development concepts. And so it's a burden on the entire system.
Kind of the worst of all worlds.
Yeah, so if we can fix everything kind of all at once so that we can get the density approved that we need while also meeting our affordable housing requirements and needs, then we'd all be better off and there'd be less friction and inefficiency in the system.
This would be, just want to
And this has been my sort of problem with the zoning regime in Arlington for years, is that it's so under planned and it's on purpose.
Well, it is.
To maintain
Yeah, it
control.
goes all the way
They
back
wanna-
to the 70s when the certain kinds of promises were made.
I would have said it's not under planned, it's under zoned. And
Well,
there's an appropriate level of planning.
Yeah, a little bit of both,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But they purposefully, so like, they don't have a glup change, they have a note that says that we might have a glup change, or we would consider a glup change, but if they change the glup, then that would mean that they would have to,
This
you
is
know,
what Matt
be
was
open
bringing
to
up
a
a
different
couple
kind of
meetings
thing.
ago about
Yeah.
Langston
mean,
Boulevard. That
yeah.
without that already baked in, every person has to come in and try to figure out what they're gonna do. And Langston Boulevard still is a bit of a, it's a riskier corridor than this corridor.
Well,
So it might be
I just-
disincentivized.
as somebody who's lived on this corridor for 47 years, I just have to say the beginning years were shit. It was total Wild West. You didn't know what you're getting. And they didn't even the idea initially was the county was gonna come back and put the sidewalks and the curb and gutter in. So I cannot tell you how many sites we walked around finished buildings on pieces of plywood, waiting for the county to come put the sidewalks in. So, I mean, folks, it doesn't happen all at once. It just doesn't.
I think but the point though is that there are things that can be made better by dealing with both of these things.
Absolutely.
Planning and under zoning aspects of it, recognizing that these things do take time and there is no magic wand that can possibly,
No, and
grant-
every landowner is making their own calculation about how much money they're making on the land right now, and is it time to change, or is there a generational shift in their company? There's so much that's not in our control that we should just be clear about what is.
Yes, I appreciate it. And it also kind of speaks to Alice's point that a lot of this is kind of out of our hands in a way. So to your point and Eric's point, to do the best we can to account for the things we can, but not be afraid to push for more, because ultimately there's a lot of unknowns that none of us in this room could account for, right? And no one could blame us for not being able to anticipate those things. But with that being said, I think you spent a considerable amount of mental power on debating J. And we have, let's see, about 10 other things to get through here. So I want to run through A through I. I know my alphabet, A through I, to see our thoughts on those. And we're gonna kind of table J for a second and talk about the necessary amendment and recommendations that will be associated with this. But before we do, I'd like to move through the rest of the document. So
Can you ask a quick question,
Yes.
procedural kind of, is it worth us like just taking a straw poll about if most of us are interested in 7 so that we don't have to go, or which ones people might be interested, instead of like, are we gonna go through everyone thoroughly when maybe 4 of them we all know we don't want, or something like that? I'm just wondering how to gauge
I see.
the
So
process.
just to say it one more time so everyone can understand it and those online can hear as well.
See what I just said?
Yes.
I'm just asking if there's something, for example, are there ones that we might know right off the bat, no one's interested in, if we could take it off the consideration list? Or do we, take a quick general poll about, 2 people like this one, 7 people like this one, or whatever, like just to give us a gauge?
Right.
It's just a thought, instead of having to hash through everyone, like let's hash through 7, D, and nobody wanted D in the first place, so. I
Yeah,
don't
no,
know.
and thank you. And I think that's perfectly appropriate. A formal vote would come on to those items that we've decided to move either to vote on or to amend. So in example, if I were to look at J, and I say I would move to look for J with amendment, and then someone second, we go through the whole process. But if, to your point, there's D and no one cares about D, we don't have to go through the process of voting on D because no one cares. So with that in mind, starting with A.
One more clarification.
Yeah.
So, it's going back to our whole approach to tonight. Presuming that we may, just put forward J edited, what will be done with what we're about to hash out over the next hour in the first letters? Because an alternative approach could have been, but it sounds like we aren't planning to do this, sending along with a recommendation that might look like J, something that would say, and here are the things that we think
Principles.
also can be done, potentially be done or considered as a part of that thing, right? But, and it's similar, maybe what Mary was saying about
Yeah.
principles up front. So is it as specific as the things that are written in here in the A through I?
So you're proposing that in addition to kind of and to an extent, Joe has already worked on something to this effect. So there's a lot of very useful information we can draw from what he's already written to help formulate our kind of like readout statement to the county board in addition to our recommendation. But from my understanding, you would want us to also add, basically, these are the things we debated on. And we chose to act a certain way regarding these, notwithstanding the choice we made to select one over
I'm
the other.
asking if we are going to do that, because if we're not, I don't know if it makes sense for us to do all this hashing out over the next hour.
Okay,
It sounds like we're putting that off to this other working group that's gonna, take place afterwards.
well, I think there's still value in at least discussing which ones we think should be recommended further. I mean, some of these are conflicting, right? Like some of these in principle, you couldn't advance at the same time as advancing J, as Joe mentioned earlier. So I think that should be noted. But others have to do more so with county ordinance versus something that would be done at the state level. So we could recommend, for example, I believe it is G. G doesn't have to go to the county board, right? G is recommend, the housing commission recommend that the county board direct the county manager, initiate a study to develop policy recommendations to clarify when cash contributions to bonus density might be accepted or preferred, yada, yada. That that doesn't go to Richmond, right? Like you can advance this at the same time as J. So I do think it's worth at least looking at some of these and saying, is there something here? Is there something we want to recommend? So to Jason and Greg's point, if we want to possibly put this forward to the county board and say, hey, if you're going to go through your master plan, these are things we think you should integrate into this because we've had conversations about this in the past. Matt, you mentioned, made allusion to some of the conversations that just happened around bringing more, clarity to, both zoning and under planning. That's something that you can do in tandem with J, right? So I just want to put that out there.
So I agree with you that the issue of buyout of on-site CAFs, bonus density CAFs, is one that doesn't necessarily have to accompany this first recommendation. It's a separate recommendation, something entirely in the county board's control. But I think, and maybe I'm misreading the group, but I think we've talked about that as part of the trade-off that would let us get more for AHOWG. And so I'm reluctant to remove it from that relationship that we've sort of developed over time. So again, if it was me, just me writing this myself, I would say after that, recommend the multi-sector group be convened. We could also say, and we recommend the following understandings based on our deliberations be incorporated. And one of them would be some kind of a statement about the imbalance between the current cash buyout and base density versus the cost of providing on site. I don't have the right language for that, but
No,
but you know the idea.
Yes.
The second one would be this idea that the process that's currently being used to sometimes allow buyout of bonus density lacks clarity and transparency and needs to be fixed. And the third statement I would put there is that continue to have the AHIF contributions from commercial buildings as a third sort of, these are big ideas that we think matter moving forward. And so when you convene that group, you should.
Yeah, these are principles that would guide them.
Yes.
And honestly,
Considerations during their.
yeah, and all of the sort of, this much and that much per square foot and everything, those were examples, and they weren't put up against anything except some past data, nor do we have it up against what the trade-off might be if you if you work to provide certainty in the bonus density CAF.
That's right.
Base. So, and honestly, I'll just say this here, the GLUP change things that Matt put on the table, I just think they're not ready. I think we don't understand them well enough. They will come up.
Yeah.
But we don't understand them well enough here to say anything about them.
Which is why I, to your point, would want to move forward with Jay, because that gives us more time to more thoughtfully look at those and fully understand the ramifications of those. Sure. I don't think we have the knowledge to act in good faith now.
No,
and I think it's better for the county to be able to have that fulsome conversation. Yes.
So I want to vote yes on what Mary suggested. And I think this list is, to some extent, hasn't been exercised through scenarios. It hasn't been discussed widely. I think putting these forward at this point would constrain rather than help whatever the next organization looks at this as.
Yeah.
So I think handing this to them is one thing. Voting on these things, I think, is premature.
Yes, I agree. And that's precisely why we're having this conversation. Decide what should even be brought to a vote, what should we move forward with. I think the appropriate path then is to first take a look at these and if there are parts of the conversation we've been having that sort of resonate with some of these points thus far, we can take those pieces and we can incorporate those things thusly, or if they're too removed from the points we've been making, we can simply move them to the side. So with that in mind, I think if we look at option 1, for example, option A speaks to, I think, some of what Mary, you were just saying, that we know that the ratio between contributions to affordable housing development is out of whack, right? To the point that Alice made earlier, looking at the 2500 Wilson Boulevard plan, I think is clearly illustrated in that way. So I think that serves not as an amendment. I would strike that from A, right, and say this is simply an observation. This is a lesson learned from this process, that we would advise the county in their further deliberations to seriously consider some sort of tiered approach to look at this problem, because we've identified this as a key underlying issue. We may not have a concrete quotient for you to use to run your equation with to come up with a sufficient answer, but this is something that you should keep in mind. This should be a guiding principle
Yeah, so
throughout
this
the process.
number one, and A could be, if we're not voting to use it or move it forward, the concepts in it are some of the background, like we're saying, right?
That's right.
These are the considerations we made. These are the, kind of statements we want to share out,
I
right?
mean, it's the consensus of this group
Right.
that,
That some of that is true. and
that, the calculation related to base density affordable housing dwelling units. I don't know, I can't write it quickly, but the idea here that's in the last two lines is the idea.
Right, that we needed.
It's just not stated, it's not stated in a way that I can quickly edit.
Yeah, no, I don't think we need to do that tonight, but I think this is, does everyone agree?
To go to the committee on Tuesday.
Right, but I'm saying like, we could help them offline over the weekend or, but I'm asking the group, is anyone wanting to move forward to give this one as our recommendation to the county board? Or are we saying that some of the concepts in here we agree upon and they should be part of a future deliberation?
So that
Is that
is
where we're going?
what I would like for us to be able to. Yes.
I don't know that we should be making recommendations. I think this says, this is what we think is an issue that needs to be
Right.
resolved.
Right, like a background. The background statements that we will have, conclusions we came to is.
Right, I think we're not at
This
a
is
point
what
where
we
we want to
found,
put down
this is what we found
recommendations.
that requires further study.
Russell put something up and so you guys can take a quick look.
I think that's the language that merits.
Yeah, I just suggested,
There you go.
yeah,
Thanks,
I don't-
Russell.
sure.
Thank you for reading Mary's mind.
Yeah, he gave you.
He's had many years.
Thanks, Russell.
He's had many years of practice.
So I would say these can be recommendations to, I think these are something that we can move to the Housing Commission. These are recommendations. They're not legislative recommendations, right? They're proposals for the county board.
This is a statement though. It's not.
It's a principle.
Mhm.
It's a principle.
These are things that for 4 months we found is an issue,
Yes. All right.
And I would just list them after that second recommendation. The working group should keep the following principles in mind.
Yes.
The cash contribution from the current ordinance should be commensurate, or, should be commensurate with the value of the onsite provision. Simple.
So, but if recommending A would technically be recommending B, because in order to do that, you would have to do, you'd have to put it at 12.65 to 18.7, because that's what it is. So we'd essentially be recommending anything.
No, we're not recommending. We're just saying the cash contribution should be commensurate with the
Right,
value.
but if we say that would require the contribution to be essentially 12 point, I mean, in order for that to happen in practice, the contribution would have to be.
Right, but if they're gonna have a study, they might, I mean, the county board doesn't have to make it exactly commensurate. I mean, that's a policy decision. What we're saying is these things are out of whack.
And to point that Nikki has made in the chat, at 7:56, that we're not explicitly making policy, we're advising, right? We are making these recommendations, that the fact that we have to go through the housing commission first, and then they go to the county board, makes it clear in practice that we are an advisory committee. We're not policymaking one. So I think, while I recognize your point, Jason, that is not necessarily how things are going to go. And so I don't think we have to be mindful of that at the moment, right? This is again, as has been said, a statement of purpose. These aren't explicit recommendations beyond the definitive motions to advance any sort of legislation, right? Like that's.
Yeah, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying if saying that we recommend it to be close is we're essentially saying we recommend it to be in this ballpark of 12.65 to 8.7, because that was the numbers that produced as of the current same.
Actual value.
So I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm just saying that's essentially because it's like, in order to make it close, you have to move the number somewhere between here / in the future, whatever those.
Yeah, so whether or not we say that explicitly now, or we hold on to some of this data and perhaps provide something with more data, more specifics to the new working group, that we wouldn't want to lose that information.
Staff.
They've got it all.
But I
It
would
came
also
from
say,
Russell.
you know,
Thank you, Russell.
there was a decision about tiering here, which might be made differently by a different
Those
group of
things.
people. So that's why I'm saying it doesn't, B doesn't necessarily follow exactly from the
You're
statement.
right, it's not exact, but
Yeah.
that ballpark, this is where.
Where we would go.
I guess the problem is that you're saying that B must follow from A, and it doesn't necessarily
Not
follow from
exactly,
A.
but it's gonna be somewhere in between these numbers, because
Right,
these are the
right.
numbers calculated to make A work.
Yes.
So
I guess we're just saying that is true, but we don't need to put that in this part of the document we're doing, I think,
That's
because it's
correct.
higher level. Is that
understand.
Too prescriptive.
Yeah, so that, because Russell has that, and let's assume there is a new working group, he will provide it again.
Eric?
Why are we assuming there will be another working group?
We're making a recommendation that there be another work.
I guess this
others.
is where, yeah, I'm listening to everyone and I appreciate the conversation. I guess what I'm not understanding is if this group's not going to make any recommendations, I think I think this group should make some type of recommendations, even if it's not a lot and even if it's more vague, but not to make any recommendations, I think is unwise. I mean, it's a lift to get any group off the ground, and I wouldn't necessarily assume there would be another group. So I would, at least if there are some things that folks can agree upon, I think that's better than assuming there'll be another group to pick up this work.
Well, I think this is all under the underlying assumption that we advance J, or an amended version of J, as a recommendation, because from that flows a possible second group that would come about when the county
Do more
inevitably
technical work.
does more technical work precisely in evaluating the ordinance and making the necessary changes. So that flows from the assumption that J is advanced, right? Which would be a specific policy recommendation. I do agree with you, Eric, that we do need to advance something, but that this conversation we're having is kind of built on that tacit assumption. So with that in mind, I will just say that C for me is a non-starter.
Does anybody want no change at all?
Yeah, that's just basically what C is.
No, C is the commercial development.
We're not changing.
Maintain the provisions for contributions for commercial developments with no changes. Isn't that one of our principles?
Well, wouldn't that?
Oh, I see. I didn't see that part. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Wait.
Maintain the provisions for
Yeah.
contribution. So yeah, just leave
Oh,
the
yeah.
commercial
Fine,
alone, but
fine.
do not extract it. Yes.
Thank you. Thank
Yes.
you. Sorry about that. You
Yeah,
thought that I didn't read that correctly.
yeah.
So, gonna circle that. So D is amendment to 15.2. That's the Affordable Housing Ordinance Code, giving applicants the ability to choose a cash contribution bonus. That's it. I think we've already debated that that's not something that we want to make a decision on at this point in time. So I would say.
What do you think about, I was just curious, what do you think developers would think about D, just off the top of your head?
I think that it would be viewed as a positive mitigating step towards the potential overreach on the change to the affordable housing portion of provision.
Okay.
But I don't know that it needs to say specifically this, so long as there is language in our recommendation relative to a future working group to also consider changes to the bonus density provisions.
And I'm just also cautious of tampering with that. I think it's been demonstrated in our kind of dummy test we did that changing it according to mass calculations gave us a demonstrably worse effect than we would have wanted. And to Mary's point earlier, there need to be commensurate trade-offs where you're getting something, right? You don't want to give away the house. I don't think that's what, from when we were conversation, I never took that as the impression, but the proposal here is that we're prescribing that applicants be given the ability to choose a cash contribution for bonus density when there could be other means of sweetening the pot for developers, right? You mentioned certain regulatory reforms that can be done in lieu of what's being said here.
Right.
So I don't want to
Yeah, I mean,
jump ahead and say, let's do this.
I think without some kind of clarity around what the, where the number comes from,
Right.
I just think I don't think it's a very strong recommendation, and I think we lose some of the trading part. I mean, I think it's better listed in these, pay attention to these things,
Yeah. Exactly. That's why I wouldn't move forward with this, my thinking, so.
I mean, all you're saying is the ability to choose a cash contribution.
Not that you should, but that you must.
Or correct, or that the cash contribution take this form. Did the mechanics of the cash contribution look like?
I think because the other ordinance says it's the developer's choice among these four things is why I'm reacting to this a little bit, is.
Looks like we're taking it away.
But
No, it just, it puts the ball entirely in the developers,
that's true of the affordable housing ordinance.
Yes.
Today, correct?
Yeah.
Not of the.
not of the bonus
Right.
density. That's right. And so I'm reluctant on that word in this simple statement because I think it has meaning. Like the developer gets to pick. And without some clarity around how the number would be derived and some, transparency about that's why if we're gonna, I think G is the strongest statement about the bonus about an approach to bonus density. I don't think we need to be that prescriptive. I think we just simply should say this process, this part of the ordinance needs a new look, of our
And do
ordinance.
we share the same priority we did 20 years ago?
Well, right, and there was a reason it was what it was, and we all talked about that, and I think the group collectively was like, yep, we should be willing to cash out, but what, cash out how? At what price?
But I looking at D and pairing it with G, I think G, it captures some of what you're saying of giving that option, right? Giving this as a notion to consider without necessarily being so explicit as to talk about the ability to choose cash contribution bonus density given Mary's concerns. So
Might be accepted.
Might.
To me, it doesn't. that's a much more watered down recommendation than the one we're providing relative to the affordable housing itself. Or a policy statement that it should be commensurate.
Well, I mean, we could make the same statement, the cash contribution for bonus density buyout should be commensurate with the value of the on-site unit provision. I'd be fine with saying that. That's pricey.
Well, but that's you're at. Yeah, that's.
It's gonna block.
Another step for that's endorsing that there is the ability to make the same. You're saying, so yes, the ability to do so and that it be.
Commensurate.
Yeah. Well, what about, do you all think that if we took G, that would kind of subsume a little bit of, which one are we on, the ability to D, right? Look, so instead of maybe saying D specifically, it would kind of fall under there, like part of the recommendation is develop a policy that either says we want all this way and here's the formula, or you've got two options and here's how they equal up or don't equal up. Like it, maybe that falls under what the study would propose anyway, does
I'm gonna
it?
do some write-ups here.
Do you think that would fall under it or no?
I'm sorry, say that again.
I'm just thinking like if we don't mention D, but we do end up bringing G in some format, it might cover D. Because one of the things is their ability to choose the contribution, cash over or not, and at what, what valuation between the two, meaning that would all fall under what they study under G.
They kind of,
That,
they kind of say the same thing. So which is, I mean, D and G are basically the same and G may be better worded.
You're talking about the strength of the language.
Correct.
specifically,
Yes.
Right. I think that's the quibble. It's the strength of the language,
Correct.
not the spirit of it. The spirit is the same. Right. I don't think we disagree with that.
what are you recommending then? I guess I'm not following.
To me, it's.
You like it? How?
No, I'm expressing a preference for the language in D that gives applicants the ability versus G that recommends the county board develop policy recommendations that might, when cash contributions might be accepted or.
Yes, so that's the developers in charge and here the county's in charge, right? So that's the push and pull.
Well,
Maybe we say they need to investigate which way it should be. Like, we don't have to decide that
this
tonight.
is what the study is about. Is initiate a study, right? So I would say as a compromise solution here, because I do recognize there's this tension here, and I'm reluctant to further whip this horse. So I would like to make a proposal that within the language of G, if you go to the third line of G, it says clarify when cash contributions for bonus density should be accepted, right? Or preferred over on-site units with considerations advanced options. But the predicate sentence says initiate a study to develop a policy. So this would set the parameters by which the county can determine where the equilibrium between developers and the county lies. And so the power is not necessarily within the language set on one side or the other. They can investigate where that balance is and see, okay, well, maybe we get 60% as a county, developers get 40%.
Like, because like in one Roslyn, that's all bonus density. So this is just pretty much expanding, like, because we do that right now with our sector plans, but this is saying. Anyway,
I think too, if we're recommending that they establish a study, they're gonna put the parameters around their own study. So I don't know how deeply we need, they're gonna put a scope and all that stuff, so.
Here's what I think we all agree that the bonus density CAF situation needs further investigation to determine when it is appropriate.
Yes.
For there to be a cash buyout. Or we can say something like, I mean, I'm back to like, there should just be 3 statements after this, the working group, right? And it's just, how do we write the statement about this? We all agree that exploring how to provide certainty in cashing out the bonus on-site units is a good, that it should be worked on, right? I think the whole group agrees on that. So it's just a question of how can we get to a statement that's of a similar clarity as the one Russell put up there for the cash buyout of, and I think we don't know, I mean, I would love to say it should be commensurate, but I actually think in the trade, it probably won't be. It'd probably be 60% or 80, I mean, there's lots of ways to figure it. So I don't know, we leave it to you, Brian, but don't belabor it, try for a sentence that says.
I think the concern with that approach would be that leaves the door open when it would be appropriate, that statement leaves the door open at the end of that study to the answer being never.
Right.
Or in very limited circumstances, whatever.
And
It doesn't really give the clarity.
That's
and
fair,
what
Greg.
people are looking for.
That's fair. So, that's the trouble with writing on the fly.
We want to
right?
have that added. I just want to make sure I understand. Where that,
I'm not sure that I have the exact answer. I think should is progress
Is
over
better.
might.
I agree. Yeah,
I wish Matt, the attorney, was here.
yes.
You're pretty good for a non-attorney. That's good.
I'm thinking like, okay, wait.
To some extent, we're just giving guidance to the bigger working.
We're
Yeah,
saying,
Yeah, but,
And so
but it's important there because the way it's worded, it could be not, he could leave the table with nothing. All right, so
And the county will, I see your point. It's like, why are we getting so?
we're threading a needle.
Right, but I guess your point is like, why do it? Why are we even in this exercise to start, right? In a way,
I think some general guidance of what we agreed
yes.
is
Okay.
really the best we can accomplish. Because when we get down into the weeds, it's just gonna get tossed.
I'm
And they're
usually
gonna start.
go with I.
that we do what?
Go with I.
No, we're not doing
We go with I.
Throw it all at the wall.
I'm only
Through it. Oh my
I
God.
think also going back to what Michelle said, I think that it's really important that we that this take place after we go through our comprehensive plan, because again, it's like, if we make a policy here before all this has gone out, we change our LUPs and everything, it's like, we don't want a situation where we have really super extremely low base and like high potential max bonus, and it gives this entire gray area, which is kind of where we've been heading now, when we're doing these special LUP studies, and it becomes like, I think that this whole comprehensive plan process is gonna take that, give some clarity, because of, for better or worse, been afraid to address, like, what do we do with this parcel that's a block away from this planned area? And even within the planned area, there's like, the FAR base is like 1.5, which is like what this, I mean, you have a basic, R zone, that could be almost like 1, right? So you have like a FAR 1, and then up for the entire county, an R zone, and then you go right up to the metro, and it goes 1.5, which is not really a big thing. And then I think, and then we can have then we provide the full on, like, okay, this is what we want for base, this is what we want for bonus. It's written in here. Everything is very written down. There's no sort of the gray area gets erased, which is going to be messy. But I think that could be like, yes, that is a risk. But once that is, knowing that is going to be resolved can be a big, I think, relief to say, okay, wow, in 5 years' time, we have completely changed our, a lot of big policies, but also the small ones down to knowing exactly how much base and bonus and other potential things that the county picks as we, that could be huge, I think.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think that's fair. I mean, I think that would go in our recommendation readout at the end of our, that wouldn't be specifically in the recommendation, would be in what do you call it, like a reference list, and saying, we recommend that this process take on a certain characters, that you do have that depth of studies, that there is a sort of predictability to it. I think that's fair. I'm fine with that.
Okay, so you're gonna use a little of the language from D and rewrite G a little bit.
I think most of the language in G is appropriate. I don't think there really needs to be anything from B added.
Okay, just the should.
It should, yeah, and there's a little bit of a linguistic thing here in G as well.
The when, the other word that
Yeah, I was
I'm concerned over.
okay,
Which word?
clarify
When
that.
recommendations clarify when cash contribution.
I wrote down to clarify that cash contribution for bonus density should be accepted.
I think they have to make that decision, so we could say to clarify whether or not,
If,
right?
yeah,
Yeah, if. I
Because
think
it's
that's-
part of the deliberation that they're gonna study it.
Yeah.
I guess.
I think if is fine.
You're not, are you thinking that this is a separate recommendation to the county board to set up a different study?
Yes.
Oh, oh. No, I actually don't think that's a good idea. I mean, I think it needs to all be part of this study.
The working group.
Because, again, I'm gonna go back to, we who have discussed this ad nauseum for several months have reached the conclusion that this is all we got to trade.
Mm,
This is our main source of increasing certainty as we seek to increase AHIF contribution.
mhm.
That's, so if you separate it out from here, you lose that nexus. That's my view, but that's, and you know, I mean, Michelle and I reached this conclusion that we couldn't change the underlying calculation for base if we couldn't find a way to provide certainty, which would free up cash.
Just to work off of that. So assuming that G would work in tandem with J, if that, they shouldn't be separate, how would that affect the first two sentences of G? Because instead of initiating a study, you would effectively be saying that this is something you should do as part of J. And I suppose that would be.
We're after J. First, we have to get the permission. If we
Yeah,
don't
you
have the
have-
permission, then G is irrelevant, right? So it's subsequent.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
you could do, I mean, this was where we reached on the email thread was like, I said, well, heck, let's just recommend that that they figure out how to buy out the bonus.
But then I think.
Fine.
But, and just let the rest of it go.
Right.
You're not gonna, in my view, again, you're not gonna get the change in the underlying calculation if you separate these two things.
Mhm.
So we could just recommend, figure out about bonus
No, we could-
buyout, and we would get more money for AHIP. And we would get certainty. We wouldn't be able to fix the underlying contribution.
Well,
If we're in the state statute moment. If you get this other thing, I don't know. I think I've, gotten us into some really bad holes here, and I think probably I should go home. And just let you guys figure it
But
out.
also too is that our base could, like, what if we, again, our base, the highest is what, 4.8 FAR? What if the base could become like 7? And then it's like, there's gonna be no bonus at all, right? For some projects that could go forward if we adjust our bases. So that's why I think it needs, I mean, it needs to go together with it.
I think
Is the problem that we're saying initiate a study, that we could remove that part and say part of the working group, the issues that the working group could consider would be recommendations around if, when cash contributions, would be accepted or preferred, or you could, as you said, do we, raise the base density, and then there's hardly ever a time that you're in that negotiation anyway, or whatever, like, again, I feel like the working group could look at some of these things. We just need to get general.
so Greg had a
Yeah.
suggestion a long time ago that in the second recommendation, the one that I wrote, that we specifically reference amendments to the first section of the ordinance, which is about base, and the second section, which is about bonus. So that we're putting squarely there in our recommendation about the multi-sector working group, that they're gonna look at both of those. And then, how you characterize our understandings, our shared understandings that should guide this. The first one is about the base and the second one is about bonus. We've got to do something about bonus that's more transparent and more clear.
Mhm.
And then the last one is about the commercial buildings, right? That's C. So those are sort of like the three big ideas that we have taken away from all of this conversation we've had is, and so we want to say to the Housing Commission, and we want to say if this working group thing.
These are our main.
These are our main big ideas.
Right. these are the things you should act upon.
Yeah,
based
this is why we couldn't, this is why we think the county board needs more control.
Yeah.
Is because these three big ideas can't be rectified unless the county has control of all of that.
Okay.
Right?
And
Deal with our sub-market, you know,
Yeah.
we're talking to the general assembly, like, this doesn't work on the big scale. We need to be able to.
do you know parts of? Hey, you. My head is kind of seeing mixed up. Was it you or Russell who knew offhand what parts of Arlington ordinance have to deal with the base and bonus?
Say again.
Um,
Like,
the basin
well,
in section 15.5.9 or 15.5.8 and the bonus is 15.5.9.
Okay, thank you. I just wanna, if we're gonna make those amendments into the language, I'm gonna have those offhand. I don't know if they're offhand myself. Okay, so if we're looking at G and we're trying to explicitly say that we want to talk about 15.5.8, which deals with the base, 15.5.9 deals with the bonus. I recommend that
it's the county.
looking at G, we say that the county board should direct the manager to, instead of saying initiate, say, let's just say develop a policy, right? Because I don't want us to, as Greg, you said, like, I don't want them to go and then just kind of throw it in the air and say, well, we're just not gonna do anything about it, because they think they all have to happen in tandem. I would
So
want
you
them,
would want the county manager to develop a policy
right,
separate from what the working group is gonna do, or would it be part of that?
this would be
or-
part of this, right?
Okay.
As Mary said, this would be something that's done together. I don't think these things can be separate. J would have to happen, but then following from that, whatever the county board does, this needs to happen in tandem. And so I would ask, looking at the language we've specified, that we explicitly say that 15.5.8, which is the part of the Virginia, Arlington ordinance that deals with the base, and 15.5.9, which deals with the bonus, that these components explicitly be studied in tandem, that these can't be done separately.
Yes.
These must be done
Yes.
together. That's what I'm suggesting.
Yes.
Okay, so looking at G, that we adopt that language here. So how would that be said?
So Ken, let me ask you this, because it's 5 to 9. If that's the shape of what we're doing, we're doing J as we talked about it. We're doing some variation of the one I wrote as the second step, referencing both parts of the code. And then we're basically gonna do, I don't know if we call it guiding principles or key understandings that inform our recommendations, or something that are 3. One is about the base, one is about bonus, and one is about the commercial buildings. Brian, what if we give you a nod about basically you guys go wordsmith it? And you send it out to us on Monday, and if anybody has a problem or a suggestion to adjust it, they can respond, or you send it out tomorrow. As opposed to trying to, I've done enough of this kind of wordsmithing where we're not looking at the words on the screen, and it just gets, it gets really hard to follow. That's all.
Well, I prefer if we're able to at least approve, because it seems like we're in agreement on what C here, that we want C to advance as is, because it deals with the commercial developments, right?
Yes.
And I think we're
Oh,
generally,
we're gonna make that as a separate recommendation.
well,
No,
the
these are the concepts that are gonna be.
concept, these are
Oh,
concepts
okay.
we
The
developed,
3, yeah.
right? That if we're looking at, we've discussed G at some length, so I think we generally have an idea of what we want to do with that. Looking at the next page, I is a non-starter.
And H is a
And
non-starter.
H is a non-starter as well. So really, I think the votes we would be taking tonight would be on J and G, right? But those are the recommendations made to the county board as explicit also recommendations that the housing committee would vote on. Whereas the rest are parts of a.
What are you doing with are you considering the recommendation for the multi-sector working group as being part of J?
That's correct.
Oh, okay,
That's correct.
sorry.
So, just to wrap up, and we have little time left, but I appreciate a few more minutes if you have it. Looking at J, I want to get the spirit of the language that we've expressed in order to, fully thresh out what this vote would be, so everyone understands what they're voting on.
Alex, can you put the words back up?
Yeah.
No, are you suggesting, for example, that we vote if we all want J and then these
No.
other items would come below it as some of our statements, like A talks about the situation we all acknowledge is out of whack. C says we don't want to mess with commercial. G, with some combination with D, are some of the recommendations we have for this multi-sector working group, like something like that. Is that what you're?
So what I was thinking of, first looking at J, we would, if there's any, so what I would do, I would make a motion to put this forward, and someone could put forward a motion to amend. That person could then motion to amend. We would vote on that motion to amend. Then we would say, okay, there's something in J we would like to add specifically in the language, not contextualized, but just specifically in the language. We would say, let's add this to J, and then vote on an amended version J. Now, all the contextual language, we would not vote upon that because that's not a recommendation being made to the Housing Commission. This is something that is a read ahead for them to say, this is what we've done. These are the things that we agree upon. This is what you should know that came out of this experience. But this particular recommendation we're making to you, for example, Jay, this is what we want you to send to the county board. This is what we want you to have them do, right?
So we're just looking to get the language on J, and that's the main vote, and then the other items you're gonna wordsmith over the weekend, and we'll see how it is, like the statements that come from A through G.
So we would just be voting on G and J. The rest of that is, to your point, correct?
Okay,
Yes, we
but
would.
what's the vote on G now? I'm confused about that.
So G
Oh,
would
that
be,
was just some work we were recommending for the working group to do.
I thought we were not gonna vote separately on G. I thought we were gonna find a way to reference base and bonus in the second piece in the recommendation that I wrote. This is why I'm getting really agitated. I'm sorry, I just,
so you wait, so I understand this correctly. You want G to be a part of J. Is that what you're saying?
well,
The bullet underneath it, is that what we're,
so
the way
well, first of all, we still didn't fix the language in J, but
But here's the thing, Mary, what if?
that's why I'm saying I should maybe go home and just let you guys do whatever the heck you're gonna do, because I'll just say, for 20 years, I was the person who wrote the motions for both boards that I was on, and so I'm very particular about this, and so I'm having trouble because I'm not in control of the typing, and we're all talking, and so I should maybe just go, and whatever you guys.
Then you can edit what.
You can suggest on Monday, yeah.
I mean, I thought you said, Brian, we're collapsing the second piece into J. So J actually has two recommendations. One is that they pursue legislation to grant Arlington the authority to revise its affordable housing ordinance. And we talked about some changes in that language, but okay, never mind, because actually, we want them to seek new legislation that would grant them the authority to revise their affordable housing ordinance. So they need to replace section XX of the state code with new legislation that grants Arlington County the authority to revise, right? That end part.
Okay.
So
you would basically be saying that parts of it's 15.2-735.1, that the relevant parts of that piece of the code would be amended to include the language we've expressed in J to grant Arlington the authority change the affordable housing ordinance.
You want them to amend the state section,
Yes.
state section of the code to grant Arlington County the authority to revise its own ordinance.
Yes.
Okay, so that's new. You hadn't said that before. You hadn't said amend. That was not in our words before.
What was the one?
We had,
You had enablement and so here's what I understand it to say now. Recommend that the Housing Commission advise the county board to seek an amendment of section, whatever that number is.
Well, it would be enabling legislation. This is what this specifically be. Because like, as you said, you would have to, right? You said pass one law to
Well,
take one off the books. Then
you just changed it again because you said you wanted them to amend that section of the code, of the state code.
I do think we're in the weeds again, like we give them the basic idea, they are gonna decide as like county board or county attorney office, right? About what needs to be requested to be removed or amended or replaced or both, like, I don't know that this is not legislative language, it's just the concept we're getting over to them, like.
Right, but enabling legislation means different thing than amending or replacing. Those are three different legislative
So we
ideas and
Have tomorrow, you guys could figure out what is the proper adjective or verb to use in that space. Would that be it? Were you able to do that tomorrow?
Russell, a quick question on that. So in best of your recollection, what we were pursuing, this is achievable by amending the ordinance, not just replacing it. Is that correct?
amending the
Amending the
statute.
section of the Code of Virginia. Because
Yes.
that is regarding affordable dwelling units. Basically, it's exclusively for Arlington County, yes.
So, okay, so you're amending, you're seeking an amendment to that section that would grant Arlington County the authority, right? That's what you're asking for. Okay, just so we're clear on that. Then I thought what we were going to do was say, and further, we recommend that we should probably change it to say, we recommend that following passage of the legislation, the county board convene a multi-sector working group to further develop options for amending, and here's where we state the two sections of the Arlington County
15.5.
Code.
5.9.
Yes. And I would just say of the Arlington County Code, Alex, as opposed to the existing ordinance. And if you want, you can say, 15.5.8 base density and 15.5.9 bonus density so that readers have no confusion.
Just numbers to most people.
It's, yeah, right, because
Good.
most people don't know the section.
Most people-
Matt does, but the rest of us don't. And then my recommendation would be, so then we've got both of them in there.
Mhm.
We've said, we're gonna look at these together. And then I would say, something as explanatory that says, after 4 months of work, this working group arrived at the following understandings. That is and that the first one is is the thing about base density. The second one is about bonus density, and the third one is about maintaining the commercial contribution.
Okay.
So,
And so I just want to take that and wrap it into our following motion. So to look at revised option J again, I'll wait till Alex finishes typing.
and just get Mary's recommendation out of there.
So looking at revised option J, I wanted to kind of do a little bit of wordsmithing here from what Russell's put into the chat. So I want to have for Jace recommend that the Housing Commission advise, so going
Mhm.
Jay.
Now you change that.
I just don't
Instead of
like having
recommend.
recommend so many times. It's cumbersome for me. Advise that the county board pursue an amendment to an instituted part of the code, so it'll be 15.2-735.1.
Right, it's over there in the chat,
Yeah.
right?
Yes, so just, again, just moving around some stuff a little bit. Of the Code of Virginia.
You could, yeah.
So it was- That would,
It'll be a lot faster if I just stop sharing.
yeah,
And so if you take out enabling legislation, because now you're using,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so
you're using amendment instead.
It'll go. Can you grab it out of the chat?
Yeah, that's.
yeah, so he's gonna just work on that and then he'll get it back up in a second. But yeah, so that will fundamentally change the language there because now we're seeking an amendment of the code that would allow Arlington the ability to act on its own authority, right? So we're not replacing.
Well, I mean, yeah, to revise, I like the end of that needed to respond to evolving policy goals.
Yeah, I want to keep that. That was in the other one. I want to keep that there.
Could we add, like, keep the evolving policy, and community needs, but put in that comprehensive plan is gonna be, like, at least at the initial, this is gonna really derive what those needs and policy goals are.
I wouldn't at this point.
I wouldn't
I wouldn't.
Because I think if they do it, if the county board does it, they're gonna drop it into the CPHD planning process. So I don't think we have to say that. I think they will, just for efficiency.
Oh, so you're saying that we don't need to because the comp plan process should be done by the time, like, so I worry that this gets initiated before then, and then it's like, we're doing this, and I want to make sure that get going to.
Well, the
Michelle,
county
that
board,
is-
I mean, I will say, we had a lot of things running all at the same time, and so it was partly our job was to make sure that we had things, that things were aligned. And if we couldn't get them aligned, to acknowledge it.
Okay, so let's take a look for a second. So this is the new language. Thank you very much, Alex, for doing this. So we have recommend the Housing Commission by 3 times.
There's an extra that after Code of Virginia in the revision. There you go.
Thank you for catching that. Okay, so if this looks good to you, oh, my computer just died. Let me take a look.
And Alex, can you change should the legislation pass in the second one to
Upon enactment.
following passage of the,
On enactment.
I would just say following passage of
Or upon.
following passage of the legislation. No, I'd leave recommend. Oh, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, following.
Passage of the legislation. The county board convene, I would get the should out of there. Passage of. The county board, get rid of that should. Recommend that the county board convene. Yeah,
And then further back, legislation pass, you can take out pass. Like 4 words
Oh.
back.
Right.
passage of, yeah,
Passage.
there you go.
Okay.
Convene a multi-sector working group to further develop options for amending base and bonus of the Arlington Code.
So on that, if this looks good to you all, I will make a motion to.
Just for the, I want it for the bonus density, are we gonna say explicitly that there's gonna be a certain number there? Or, cause like, if we say we're gonna amend, that can mean many, like, oh, we're just gonna change, like,
What are you
Okay.
suggesting then that?
like,
What
or
would you
maybe
put?
like, so, like, I know we have. Because right now the bonus is not prescribed. So are we going to say that at least an explanation, say that we recommend that there be a comprehensive, that this is a comprehensive base and bonus should have some sort of prescription as to this is what it's gonna be.
So a statement we could try, I mean, again, on bonus density, like we have Russell's, the one Russell put in the thing about about the base, right? That we all kind of said, yeah, that's kind of what we think. Here's one on bonus. A transparent, clear process to monetize on-site bonus density related CAFs is needed. That's just a state. That's
Can you read
just-
it again?
That's our understanding.
Sure.
A transparent, clear process to monetize on-site bonus density CAFs is needed.
Monetize on-site bonus. How does that fall with you?
I don't really know what that means.
It means we should, they are, should be developed. How about that? A transparent, clear process to monetize on-site bonus density with CAFs should be developed.
Maybe something about the standardization. put a
Standard, I was
standard-
wondering about the
yeah,
word standard also.
standard.
What-
Yeah, to monetize a standard on-site bonus. Or
I think what Alex is writing is good, developed and standardized.
yeah, that's fine.
Or develop a, well, whatever.
I
Uh,
would say that transparent and clear are the same.
yes,
Okay, and it should be on bonus density, Alex, not on base.
It's all about that base.
And then I do want to somehow put in, at least incorporate comprehensive plan and GLUP update to inform or as this is a part of say this is part of a comprehensive process that should be at least linked as to.
I mean, I think that again, that would take place during the
Working group itself?
well, during the review of the master plan. So I'm not sure if
But we'd explicitly say that we really want to make sure this is tied into whatever is, because I'm just looking at there's gonna be a GLUP, it says GLUP update begins 2026. So I just want to make sure whatever changes are made to base and bonus density, is this gonna inform our GLUP update, or is our GLUP update as derived from our huge, big thing that we're doing now? Is that gonna, I think it's a core principle that this is a feeding of all the other plans. I mean, this is based on evolving goals and community needs. It's like, well, this is our big push here of what that is and how this is gonna inform. So I'll make sure that is somehow characterized as this comprehensive plan. This is the plan that has all of our sub.
So you wanted to say something where that it's, incorporated into other comprehensive planning
it's other planning
or something like
documents.
that?
Yeah.
I mean, goals and community needs are a nice generality. He's just operationalizing it in Arlington speak in documents we have. So I think it should be referenced.
Okay. So
How do you want to say it?
I think in first, well, one little point, in the bonus density line, can you delete transparent, clear, or same. But I think in that, to speak to Jason's point, we would want to add a point specifying that, and can you, sorry, my brain is trying
Yeah,
to.
I'd say that.
Could be a fourth.
Fourth
point
bullet
then here,
saying
right?
this should fit in, like, as we're doing our comprehensive planning, this should fit in to that, not this is gonna be, like, I'm just saying hypothetically, this passes in January, in let's be 26, and this passes next year in March. It's summer, that it's just clearly tying this to whatever it says, well, update begins 2026.
Okay, so this would be housed in the comprehensive
Yeah,
planning update.
This is gonna kind of plug and play there, and not this is its own kind of, it just formalizes the fact this is going on.
Okay, cool. No, I think that makes sense. All right, and this should fit into the comprehensive plan. Oh, awesome, great.
Yep.
All right, so with that, I think this looks good. You'd be voting on J. Again, the explanation and what's underneath that is something that's going to be developed, in days to come. But specifically, the recommendation and the, sidebar there which talks about the following passage legislation, convening, the multi-sector working group, that part that we're looking at. Revised option J. That's what we'll be voting on, that there.
But we have a shared understanding that you're not gonna take this to the county, to the housing commission without including our understandings,
That's
right?
correct.
Right, so these four things on the bottom are part of what's gonna.
That's expressly within, yes,
Revise and
that's
extend.
correct.
Was the first understanding the one that was saying that the current formula is not commensurate with the value of onsite?
Russell
Where's
had,
that?
there was something in Russell put in the chat and,
Or is it up, further up?
yeah, it was a while ago.
What specifically in the chat?
Can you find it?
Alex, are you able to scroll up?
Alex.
There it is.
Here it goes.
Oh, it's pinned. Very smart.
That might be one of our first ones to kind of lay the foundation for it, why we're doing this, right? Because 20 years is long enough, no.
There's that too.
You wanted it at on the base one?
I think before it would be the first bullet, maybe
But
base would
he's
be
got it.
down one.
That's what, no, that's what you put it in the right place.
In
It's
the
in the
base.
right place.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Base density.
And I think instead of should be commensurate, I would say are not commensurate with the value. So that's the understanding, right?
Do we need to say something like at this time or currently or anything? Just leave it like that?
Well, I think this.
Like the whole point is like today versus 20 years?
Right, yeah,
That's
this is just like, this is our understanding.
At this
This-
moment.
At this moment.
Okay.
This-
Uh-huh.
And then on commercial, commercial contributions to AHIF should be continued.
Yes.
Or there should be no changes. to
No,
the
yeah, no
contribution for-
changes.
Said to be continued.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Wait, one. No, that's already put in. Okay, cool. Cool. That's fun. All right. Now with that, I want to go back up to revised option J, and I gotta really lean in and read this thing. Okay, so
Okay.
Make a motion that we vote to approve revised option J as read. Recommend that the housing commission advise the county board to pursue an amendment.
To pursue.
To
Thank
pursue.
you.
Or that the county board pursue, whichever way.
Yeah.
An amendment.
No, I think rise the county board, yeah.
County board to pursue an amendment to section 15.2 735.1 of the Code of Virginia to provide Arlington County the flexibility to revise its affordable housing ordinance as needed to respond to the evolving policy goals and community interests.
Needs.
No, sorry, I just misread it. That's just, I'm going insane. Secondly, recommend that following passage of the legislation, the county board should convene a multi-sector. Convene, sorry, it's got it lined out. Convene a multi-sector working group to further develop options for amending 15.5.8 base density and 15.5.9 bonus density of the county code, with the understanding that the explanation below be included in summary documents, which includes mention of base density, bonus density, commercial contributions, and that this should fit into the comprehensive planning efforts.
So instead of saying this should fit into the comprehensive, we should say any future work. Right,
Yeah,
instead of
future work
this,
related.
because
What is-
this refers to
Yeah.
us.
Related to
Any,
base or bonus, yeah, any.
any future work should fit into the comprehensive planning, into into the comprehensive.
Yeah.
Counties comprehensive planning efforts.
Well, it's capitalized. So that's
That's what it implies, that we're referring
the
to.
that we're referring to the comprehensive plan.
Okay, so you could take off being,
So I would say into the comprehensive plan update work.
Yeah,
That's
you
out
got your
the
button,
way.
but yeah.
Yeah. Update process.
See, Mary, you now lost your mojo.
No, I'm actually very good at this. But it's a pain in the butt. I'm
Yeah,
are you
I'm
ready for a
sorry.
second now? Is that what we-
well, I have to read the explanation one more time so that, because we've added more to it.
Okay,
I
go
can't-
right ahead.
So again, oh, yes, Eric.
I had a comment, but you know what? It doesn't matter. My understanding of the status of the comp plan update is I don't know that this would make it in time, but I also don't feel that strongly enough to suggest an edit. So just keep it as is. It's fine.
But what do you mean not make it in time? Like,
I mean, that's the comp plan update is happening now. And my understanding is like the overall comp plan update, and that's gonna be finalized probably within the next year, I think.
yeah. That's saying that this is following that essentially. That's how it fits.
To make sure they are in agreement.
And this should
Don't
be on
clash.
their radar, which would occur well before the finalization of the comp plan next year.
Sounds good.
So I'll just read the explanation one more time since we made some edits there. Explanation, the group has the following understandings. Base density, cash contributions resulting from the affordable housing ordinance are not commensurate with the value of the on-site provision. Bonus density, a clear process to monetize on-site bonus density caps should be developed and standardized. Commercial contributions to be continued as is. And any future work should fit into the comprehensive plan update process. Do I have a second on that motion?
Seconded.
So we'll do a vote here. So Eric Berkey,
I
Nikki Blake,
Yes.
Alice Hogan,
Aye.
Mary Hines,
Aye.
Audrey Kremer.
Aye.
I as well. Caitlin Schwartz,
Yes.
Joe Ventrone,
Yes,
Greg Vanderweed, Van Weed.
Since I'm not a citizen of Arlington County, nor have I been deputized to speak on behalf of any specific industry or organization, I would like to abstain prior to voting.
Danny Ross is absent. Michelle Winters, absent. Backlund, absent. All right,
Are you walking home?
8-1 abstention, and Sarah Lanford is also absent. So yes, all right, so the motion passes with 8 in favor, 1 abstention, and 4 absent. So thank you all very, very much. We will work on developing any future language over the weekend. I send it to you for your review, but this recommendation, in addition to the explanation that we provided, will be provided on Tuesday to the Housing Commission. So thank you all so much for staying an extra 30 minutes to get this done. I really appreciate you all participating in this effort for the last 7-8 months. And I think this is going to be a really important step forward for the counties. It's a really great set of standards of extending beyond the immediate conversation around bonus, since we've talked about bonus and base and the need to reform how they interact, the clarity that needs to exist there in the process, while also taking well-needed advice from those representing developers as to what we can do to make this process not only more effective for all parties, but also be an adaptive and responsive policy so that hopefully 20+ years from now, this will still be working as well as it is when it's passed. So I really appreciate all your work, both here and online, and a special thanks to our wonderful staff that have helped me and us throughout this process over the last several months. I'm a neophyte in this realm, so I really appreciate all the support here. And thank you all for your participation. Good night.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for the record, Brian. Thank you for.
Brian, thank you for showing us.
Thank you, staff.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks,
so-
everybody.
I'm leaving,